News is brought to you in part by Chevron USA.
News Service 2 presents Alaska Nightly News with Victor George, Linda Taylor, and the entire Channel 2 News team.
Good evening. Violent crime statistics in Alaska for the first 10 months of last year show murders and robberies are up, while rape and aggravated assaults are down slightly over 1981. Figures released today by Alaska State Troopers show homicides at 62 as compared to 60 last year. There were 533 robberies compared to 467 during 1981. Sexual assaults were down slightly, 357 compared to 419. Aggravated assaults followed the same pattern, 1,407 in the first 10 months of 1982, 1,564 in 1981. Trooper spokesman Paul Edscorn says the crime rate tends to increase at the end of the year, but the complete crime figures for all of Alaska will not be in until April or May.
Meanwhile, Alaska drug enforcement officers have been given new powers in their battle against drug dealers. Many of those powers were previously granted only to federal officers, but not now. Brian Murray reports.
Alaskans are aware that the Controlled Substance Act, which began on the first day of this year, has stiffer penalties for some types of marijuana possession. But now state drug enforcement officers have some extraordinary leverage in their pursuit of serious dealers of drugs. Many of their powers rival those of the Internal Revenue Service. This woman helped write the new laws. She is Assistant Attorney General Rhonda Butterfield.
And the reasoning behind it is to take the profit out of drug trafficking and to make drug trafficking less attractive and less profitable.
State drug enforcement officers can now seize the property of a person suspected of dealing drugs. The list of items local police officers can take is virtually endless.
Planes, boats, cars, trucks, snowmobiles, motorcycles, anything in it with an engine in it that runs as far as...
Bank account?
Bank accounts, yes. Assets, money, negotiable instruments like checks, securities, gold, Krugerrands, whatever the person has that is negotiable that has been derived from drug profits.
Butterfield says so far no property or bank accounts have been seized under the new provisions, but she says the new police powers are expected to be tested very soon. Brian Murray, News Service 2.
Federal postal inspectors continue to probe the circumstances surrounding 3 pipe bombs which were mailed in Fairbanks this week. One bomb mailed to the Fairbanks Correctional Center never made it into the facility. That bomb and another were mailed to the Golden Valley Electric Association, and they were removed by a bomb squad from Eielson Air Force Base. A third bomb received at the Municipal Utility System warehouse was turned over to local police and then federal authorities. And Governor Sheffield is asking the legislature to appropriate $260,000 to help combat an epidemic of cancer-causing hepatitis B in several Yupik Eskimo villages in southwest Alaska. Additionally, the Department of Health and Social Services has been directed to take a look at its current budget and come up with another $250,000 to help fight the deadly virus. The virus, spread by prolonged intimate contact, was discovered about 10 years ago in villages near Bethel. It has been linked with liver cancer, kidney failure, and other often fatal diseases.
The future of the state's permanent fund dividend program is expected to become an issue of heated debate during this legislative session. Criticism of the program is expected to be very high, including Governor Sheffield, to believe that those funds originally intended to be shared by most Alaskans would be better spent in other areas. How do Alaskans feel about that? Well, in Fairbanks, though not many residents complained about receiving the $1,000 checks, they did say that using the money for state programs or general improvements might be just as good.
I don't think any single big program would be a better alternative. I'd like to see full funding of the student loan program and other state loan programs and enough funding to run the operating expenses of state government. Once we've done that, then we could see what's left. But again, I think the permanent fund dividend program is the fairest way to distribute excess money if there is an excess.
it's wonderful to have the money come in and be able to use it personally, but there's still more money that's left over that should be going for more things for the people in an indirect way that we would all benefit from, like senior citizen centers and maybe a health program, and things to help some of the poor people in the state, because not everybody is successful here.
I think I'd like to see, whether it be permanent fund monies or other monies, I'd like to see them spent for more social services, particularly now with the federal government pulling out of so many social service kinds of agencies.
I think there's a lot of improvements need to be made in the state, especially on the highways and communications, and I just think there's a lot of other directions the money could have gone in besides just giving it away.
Behind every Chevron sign is nearly 100 years of Alaskan history. In the 1880s, Chevron was shipping needed petroleum supplies to villages across Alaska. Today, Chevron continues to service and work with these communities. And with future Chevron oil exploration and development, our services across Alaska can grow even more. Valdez and Kenai are two communities that have benefited from oil industry activities. These communities, by working with the oil companies before operations began, were able to plan for reasonable growth and orderly change. Other communities can share these benefits too. Chevron was in Alaska in the 1880s, fueling the local community's energy needs. And Chevron is in Alaska in the 1980s, helping to fuel Alaska's and America's energy needs. There's nearly 100 years of Alaska behind every Chevron sign.
Governor Sheffield today named 4 new members to the University of Alaska Board of Regents. They are Juneau attorney Gordon Evans. He's the president of the Visual Arts Center of Alaska. John Ramberg of Fairbanks, he's an Anchorage CPA. Ann Parrish and Roy Hundorf, president and chief executive officer of Cook Inlet Region Incorporated. Those appointments are subject to confirmation by the legislature. The governor also voiced his support for more dormitory housing at the university campuses across the state. Todd Hardesty has more on the Board of Regents meeting in Juneau.
I'm in favor of education. I campaign for higher education. I want quality education. I don't think we need...
It was Governor Sheffield's first address before the University of Alaska Board of Regents. After naming the 4 new members, Sheffield announced he's added funding for dormitories for the University of Alaska Juneau campus to his capital improvement plan.
I'd like to include housing immediately for this campus, and the reason is, of course, is it's so critical for the accreditation. If we're going to have a university here, we have to have it accredited. If we're going to have a 4-unit university, we need to go all the way to make it that, and housing is so necessary. So we will include that in our capital improvement budget.
Regent Don Abel of Juneau.
Dormitories in Juneau aren't just dormitories, they are accreditation. And we set the priorities. The Regents felt as a body that the accreditation is the highest priority of this university.
The Board of Regents that I have appointed.
The Regents were also told today that Sheffield will work during the next month on housing for the Anchorage and Fairbanks campuses of the university system. And the governor used the occasion to make a plug for his lump sum appropriation type of budgeting, where the legislature would appropriate a lump sum to the university or any other state department, but the administration would have the flexibility on exactly how and where the dollars are spent.
So you can have the opportunity to save money and cut out waste and inefficiencies and things you don't need, but put more money in the areas where you do need it. I'm hopeful that the legislature will get enough trust in our administration, enough confidence in our administration, enough confidence in what we're trying to do for the people of Alaska, that we'll have that flexibility.
Sheffield's plan is not likely to sit well with many lawmakers. And there's still the question of the university's budget, which, with inflation factored in, Sheffield said today is 2.5% below this year's levels. The Regents had requested a 10% increase. University President Jay Barton.
I think the fat's been bled out, but there are many ways in which we can rethink what we do. What's that modern phrase? Not working harder, but working smarter. And we're going to try things like that.
In Juneau, Todd Hardesty, News Service 2.
Recently, a delegation from the University of Alaska went to the Soviet Union, not to discuss political detente, but to talk about the way each country deals with cold weather illnesses and alcohol addiction. Certain parts of Siberia have a climate similar to Fairbanks and other parts of the interior, and the Soviets have their own indigenous native populations. These similarities help the two groups share possible solutions to common problems. Dr. Bernard Siegel gives us an example.
They seem to have developed a very highly integrated network for providing health services to extremely rural communities. In that respect, ours does not seem to be as developed.
Last summer, State Education Commissioner Marshall Lind notified the Fairbanks School Board of a budget cut of $1.5 million. He also indicated that as much as $3.2 million could be cut. Apparently, the worst has come to pass, as we see in this report from Nolan Spencer.
How do you stay away from the classroom when you're talking about $1.7 million in 4 months?
That's the problem facing Superintendent Ken Burnley and the Fairbanks School Board. When the commissioner announced the shortfall last June, the board immediately amended its budget to accommodate the cut. The move impacted 21 people, both teachers and office personnel, directly. Crowded classrooms are standard now, and many school programs could be cut. Before last Tuesday, the cut was only a vague possibility.
But now we received a recent communique that tells us that the worst case scenario is also occurring. And that is a further reduction which hits us to the tune of 1.7%, which was a possibility last June, but now is a reality. Both of those realities have occurred because education essentially had indicated what the needs were, and the budget, the money basically were not appropriated. We have now, hopefully, a supplemental that's been pre-filed, and we're just really hoping, that it's appropriated because the need is real.
Dr. Burnley says approximately $800,000 in excess funds from fiscal year 1982 may help to ease the crunch somewhat, but with just 4 months to absorb the cut, Burnley says he doesn't see how to keep the problem out of the classrooms. In Fairbanks, Nolan Spencer, News Service 2.
On the average, over 15 dogs are put to sleep daily at the Fairbanks Animal Shelter. A new identification system for animals is being implemented to reduce that number, however. Jerry DeHogue has more on that story.
Adorable or not, if someone doesn't adopt these puppies within 3 days, they may never have a home. Last year, over 6,200 dogs were brought into this animal shelter. That's an increase of 1,000 dogs over 1981. Luckily enough, between 40 to 60% of them are either returned to owners or they are adopted. Unfortunately, a large number of them aren't. In 2 months, equipment for tattooing animals will be available at the shelter. Superintendent Bob Spencer explains the reason for tattooing.
The purpose of tattooing is to provide a permanent identification number, which we'll keep a record of down here, so if their animal is lost and then later found by someone, either they can call in for a number trace, or we can be more likely to return an animal to its owner.
Spencer says a tattoo program in Vancouver, BC has a return rate of 80%, which is quite a substantial number. Spencer is hopeful that the tattoo program in Fairbanks will have the same, if not better, results. In Fairbanks, Jerry DeHogue, News Service 2.
Sometime between now and Tuesday, somewhere in the world, pieces of the Soviet spy satellite Cosmos 1402 will hit the Earth, either on the land or in the water. The so-called footprint of the satellite could be 30 miles wide and 500 miles long. Nolan Spencer has more.
Somewhere up there, the remnants of the Soviet spy satellite Cosmos 1402 are circling the globe, preparing for the inevitable plunge to Earth. Scientists and civil defense teams all over the world are preparing for the possibility of radioactive pieces landing in their neighborhood. Here in Fairbanks, the possibility of the spy falling on someone is remote, with less than a 2% chance of fragments landing in the United States at all. Borough Emergency Services Coordinator Bob Cavanaugh says potential problems exist after Cosmos 1402 hits.
Subsequent dangers are primarily from the possible radiation that will come out of it. They should not be strongly radioactive, any pieces that get down, but if somebody were to see them and pick them up and put them in their pocket, the chances are that they could be hurt by them. And so just see a particle, happen to walk by one and say, well, gee whiz, maybe that's a satellite particle, and get away from it. There should be probably no more radiation exposure than they get from an X-ray, if that much.
Although Kavanaugh says the odds of someone being hit by pieces of falling cosmos are roughly the same as being smacked in the head with a meteorite, it still doesn't pay to take chances. In Fairbanks, Nolan Spencer, News Service 2.
Want to see a great way to play in the snow? Take a look at the Honda ATC. It's got a powerful, reliable 4-stroke engine, an automatic clutch, 3 big fat tires, and 6 different models. The Honda ATC 3-wheelers. They could be more fun than any other snow machines, especially when you run out of snow.
Available at Honda City Ski-Doo sales in Soldotna.
How many times have you searched for the bars and stools to fit your decor, only to find that most furniture stores have a very limited selection? Anchorage House of Bars and Stools on Tudor Road specializes in bars and stools with the best selection in Alaska. They have matching dinettes available for all bar stools, and they offer a quantity discount if you purchase 2 or more stools, meaning you can receive discounts ranging from 5 to 15%. Your bar can be the warm, friendly, inviting place you want it to be, with the help of Anchorage House of Bars and Stools next to Ethan Allen on Tudor Road.
This portion of Alaska Nightly News has been sponsored by Chevron USA.
In today's competitive marketplace, if you don't have the skills, you don't get the job. Cook Inlet Native Association offers adult career training so you can learn about distribution or how to be a bank teller or cashier. Study clerical skills including typing and 10-key or take a complete course in word processing. ACT classes are non-discriminatory and are open to qualified low-income individuals. Call today and talk with a counselor about your future. CINA is training people today for tomorrow's jobs.
Well, it's time for a look at Sports Alaska. Thank you for joining me. I'm Al Gill. It's the home stretch of the Cusco 300. 11 teams have checked into the Upper Calskag checkpoint, and the 2 leading mushers say they're going to try for Bethel late tonight or early tomorrow. Blanca Wasili and Gus Choknock have indicated they're going to keep racing and try to get into Bethel perhaps by 1 or 2 in the morning. Eep Anderson was the 3rd musher to check into Upper Calskag. George Atla is 4th, with Mike Williams right behind him. 25 teams are on their way back to Bethel for Maniac, with 40 teams still on the course. Well, it's come down to 4 teams in the race to get to Super Bowl 17. In